There we go. Awesome, guys. Sorry we're a little bit late. We're having some technical difficulties. So this week we're going to be diving into content creation and optimization. Before we do that, I want to do a really quick recap of some of the things that we talked about yesterday, just for anyone who watches this who may have missed last week or whatever it may be, just because it is a build-up. Right? So anything that you do this week, so if you are actually working on content optimization and building content for your website this week, it has to come from the research and the efforts you put in the week prior in terms of your messaging and in terms of everything else, okay? So first thing is you have to make sure that you have your messaging down packed. So what does that mean? It means, what is the feeling that people want to get when they land on my site? What are the things, these are the questions you want to answer. What are the things that are different about my business, my company, the way that I am, maybe it's personal branding, that other people aren't doing, right? And I'm going to give you guys a really, really quick hack, and I do this very often in terms of content as well, is go on 5 of your competitors, right? And most of us here are in the fitness industry and the wellness industry. Go on 5 of your competitors, big, small, medium size. You can pick some in between. And then go look at the reviews. And then go look at the negative reviews. And that will fuel messaging and it will fuel content. Because you will find out the things that people were dissatisfied with that you can immediately solve in real time. So that is a huge hack in just creating any kind of content piece. So for example, on LinkedIn, almost every single week, I launch a newsletter. That newsletter is based off of negative reviews of differing agencies that I see, and then I solve that problem for the ideal client. And so that's one thing that you want to do, just a quick hack that I want to throw out there. Now, if we dive into content, everything that you're going to create on your content is going to be based off of that messaging. If you haven't done your messaging, another quick hack is going to be find out the pain points of your ideal client. Typically, the best way to do that, sorry, it's a bit dark in here. Let me turn on the light on my laptop. There we go. I think that's a little bit better. Typically, the way to do that is to either interview your ideal client, like I said, read the reviews of differing people, and then learn the pain points behind the struggle. And in the wellness industry, I can tell you those inside and out, because I've worked with thousands of people, even with coaching, as well as even when I was a fitness coach. It's going to be things around what was them feeling very, very insecure looking in the mirror, them not wanting to have sex with the lights on with their partner, them changing in a corner because they're too embarrassed, them feeling really out of shape because they're going up the stairs and they're out of breath, feeling like a bad mom or a bad dad because when they get home from work, the last thing they want to do is take their kids to the play park and they just want to lie down and relax. They don't have the energy. I could go on and on, but these are the pain points. And you want to create concepts and content around these very particular pain points. Now, how you do it is the next thing that I'll get into, since this is very specifically about content creation. But typically, the issue lies with really knowing what type of content to create in the first place. So go back, find the pain points, and then from the pain points, each will develop a piece of content. Okay, they have really low energy. 5 hacks to increase your energy without giving up your favorite foods, right? Or they have lower belly fat that they can't get off. 5 exercises to burn that lower belly fat in 90 days or less. I'm just making up really random headlines here, but problem, headline, solve. Problem, headline, solve. Problem, headline, solve. Those are the things that you want to do to be able to solve the problem. Now, in terms of the type of content, so let's say it's on your website. I am a huge fan personally of videos on websites. Oh, this light keeps dying. There we go. On my website, the first thing that people see is a video because it's very attractive. It catches people's attention right away, and it tells a story. And so you don't want just a video for the sake of having a video up there. But if you can have a video that tells a story of who you are, back to your branding, your messaging, what's different about you and your organization versus others, right? You as a coach versus others, That's what you want to do. It could be 30 seconds, 40 seconds, but anything under a minute, because attention span is really low. And even if you look at like average time that someone watches a video, it's going to be like 5 to 10 seconds or less. That's why you need to have what we call a pattern interrupt, which is, think about the scroll effect. Someone's scrolling, and then they stop. So that's a pattern interrupt. So the goal of your video is to create a pattern interrupt. So that means that the first line, the first few things that you say are going to be incredibly important, because it determines to what degree people are going to continue consuming your content. So this is going to be the same across your website as it is any other platform that you choose to post content on, including social media. Okay, so next thing I wanted to dive into is, okay, got this. So I was just looking at the note that I wrote. Like, the other thing is like infographics, right? So for me, I'm a big proponent of using visuals to really explain things that you've already concepted via your messaging. So I use infographics throughout the entire website in differing manners to explain our processes, how we teach, what we do that other organizations or agencies don't do, right? I'll give you one example, and I really do wish I could share a screen, but I'll give you guys one example. So we have something on one of our pages called the SELL method, right? I made that up. It was something that I made up based off of how we really help people garner a lot more exposure through the services that we help them, that we sell, right? So the first one is like, of the SELL method, is like stories, we have exposure, we have leveraging, like leveraging your exposure in differing ways to get more exposure, and then loyalty, right? And I named that the SELL method and created an infographic off of it. Above it, there's an explanation. Here's what we do. Here's the SELL method. Here's how it operates. Below is an imagery of how this works. So if you remember, and if anyone can go back and listen, I'll just give you guys a quick reminder of what we talked about last week. And it was finding out how your ideal client consumes information, because everyone consumes information in different ways. I can tell you right now, for like the longest time, I never looked at articles. It was always videos, or it was YouTube, or it was Instagram. And lately, I think more than 50% of the content that I consume are via articles, because my niche changed, right? The type of people that are supporting changed, and I found that more useful. And so you want to find out, how does my ideal client consume information? What's like the most common way that they consume information? And the best way to find this, like we talked about, is either interviewing them or doing some kind of survey to find out what that client likes, and then utilizing that in things that you do, right? And again, when it comes to content creation, you have to determine, are you going to operate as a separate brand, or are you personally going to be the brand, right? And most of us typically, I've had some clients that don't want to be the brand, but most of us typically want to be the brand. So I'm going to speak to the majority here. So if you want to be the brand, it is important. Like, you don't necessarily need to, and I have some clients that are very like worried, or they don't want to do live videos and things like that. If you don't want to, don't do it. So like, that's my biggest principle. If something doesn't feel comfortable for you, don't do it. And the best way to relate to that is, if you had a client and they hated eating chicken breast, and you said you have to eat chicken breast to lose weight, like, you know that's probably not the best advice, because there's a zillion different things that they can do to get to the same goal without having to eat something that they don't like. So it's the same thing with you when it comes to your content creation. Don't do it if you don't like it. So if you're really uncomfortable at this moment, and that can change over time, with creating video, just because Sarah says video is a good way to be able to get exposure and that it helps differentiate you, doesn't mean you have to do it, because there are lots of other things that you can do. Your copy can stand out. You can create a blog. You can create articles around this kind of stuff. You can create infographics, right? You can create data reports, all these different things that you can do slide decks, right? That you can create, but you have to find out, what is it that I like, what is it that I don't like, and then move forward with that. So when it comes to that, just separate your pages into, okay, here's what I have. I have my home page, Okay, I have my resources page, I have my contact page, and then I have maybe the type of people that I work with, like kind of like, here's how we would be a fit to work together type of thing. And then you speak directly to that ideal client. One other thing, and I actually learned this from one of my mentors in his books that I read. And he said one time to me, he said, so what's your contact page like? I was like, what do you mean? Like, they just put in their info and then they book a call and that's it. Like, that's typically what a contact page is. And he was like, no. Like, the contact page is the most important. Most people kind of bypass it. And when I read the chapter on that, I was like, oh, interesting. And I looked at some of the examples, and what it is it's actually another way to be able to overcome objections, right? By saying who we are, why you should work with us, and why you might not be a fit to work with us. So, for example, you'll say something like, let's say your program is called the 90-Day Transformation Program. So then on your contact page, you can have, is the 90-Day Transformation Program right for me? And then you have statistics as to why it might be right or why it might not be right. And so you can have, here are the things that make it right, here are the things that don't make it right. And so the people who are your ideal clients will immediately be drawn to that. And the people who aren't meant to work with you will be repelled by that, which is exactly what you want, right? And one of the biggest laws of content creation is creating polarizing content. Because if your content is what we call vanilla, right, where it's doesn't really attract anybody, but it also doesn't really push anybody away, then your content isn't speaking to a very particular person and to a very particular ideal client. So you need to be very strong about what your content is. And the way to do that is to think, what are my thoughts about this? What are my opinions? Do I like intermittent fasting? Do I think full body workouts are good? Do I think that people should train glutes 3 times a week? Goodness, definitely not a month or a day, whatever. Whatever your thoughts and beliefs are, what is it? And then dive into that, right? Because the whole point is, let's say you're a big keto person, right? I'm just making this up. Let's say you're a big keto person. Everyone who's super into keto and you're talking about all the great things, you're talking about all the other diets suck, okay? Everyone who's super into and believes in what you believe in will be and become raving fans. That's what you want. And the people who are not will be repelled by it. Instead of you just speaking of like, here's what a caloric deficit is, here's what time under tension is, like here's the things that are repeated and what everyone else says, right? So you want to say, okay, for your personal brand, oh, here comes the light again. What are your opinions? What are the things that you think about? What do you feel strongly about? What do you feel not great about? Do you think intermittent fasting is a form of starvation or the best thing that was ever invented because it's good because of X, Y, Z? Right? What are the things that you believe? And then like scream that out across your website, across your social platforms, all of these things, right? And then very simply across your website, all you have to do is you create a resource section, and then on that resource section, you have subsections, right? I'm going to see if I can just show you guys here. Hopefully this is, no, there we go. So you can see here, I have the resource section, and then under the resource section, I have blog, infographics, data reports, behind the scenes, influencer series, right? So that's just like a series that we do because I noticed that other agencies aren't doing that side of things. And so you can have one resource section, you can have 2 to 3 content types that you find helpful, and then use those content types across the board and then do weekly planning with it. And then the biggest thing is, I'll have a lot of coaches be like, I'm feeling really overwhelmed, like, it's a lot of content, it's a lot of work, I have to work on getting clientele, and I also have to do this, and I have to train clients, and I have to figure out what my messaging is and all that kind of stuff. And that's true because at the beginning you have to wear a ton of hats, and it can be very overwhelming because you're a coach and now you're having to learn all these different things if you do want to take the independent, freelancer, or entrepreneurial route. So the goal is to stop or reduce overwhelm, one step at a time. Just focus on the next thing that's in front of you, because if you try to see the whole picture, you're going to freak out and want to go home. I've had that a million times over, right? And so think, okay, let's say my 2 content types are going to be interviews and slide decks, for example. And I'm going to take 3 days out of that month to just create a month's worth of content. That's it. Like your entire 8-hour day is dedicated to that, however many hours you have in that day. Now, boom, you have entire month's worth of content that can be released across the website, and also, guess what? Be broken into multiple pieces that you can disperse across differing platforms. So let's say you post every month an interview with a client or an interview with a success story. I'm just, again, giving an example. And it was a 10-minute interview. That can be cut up into 30-second scenes, 45-second scenes. It can be posted into shorts on YouTube. It can be posted as reels on Instagram. It can be posted on TikTok, right? It can be posted on LinkedIn. It can be one piece of content can be posted across different platforms 5, 10, 15 times, right? So instead of, I need to create content every day for X, Y, and Z platform, you create a few pieces of content, you cut it up into small bite-sized pieces, apparently I'm hungry, and then you go ahead and disperse that across your social media, okay? So I'm going to quickly wrap up and go over everything we went over until Thursday. We have one more. We're diving into SEO on Thursday. So biggest thing, just reflecting on last week. Before you even start doing your content, make sure you have your messaging down. Make sure your messaging is based on your differentiating factors after you've done your research with other people in your field. So it could be bigger size companies, could be small solopreneurs, freelancers, whatever it might be. Maybe find a little bit of all of them. Once you have done that and you found your differentiating factors, make sure you're using those alongside pain points. What are the pain points of my ideal client? That's a headline and a content piece. And do that over and over again so that you can create content for a whole month. Third, create a resource section. Find the types of content you want to create, not based on what anyone says is right or wrong, but what the type of content that you actually enjoy, that is quality and is authentic and polarizing. That's all I ask. How you do it is totally up to you, right? And then once you create that in bulk, so you don't have to always go back and feel like you're doing something every single day and not getting really overwhelmed. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. If there's any questions, like usual, I will take a look later and make sure I answer those as well. And then Thursday, I will be with you guys at the same time, diving into SEO and some of the things that you can do for SEO to be able to grow your business once you have your website up. All right, guys, we'll talk to you soon. Hopefully this was helpful.